I feel like I want us to ease into our time here today. Happy Thursday. Ha. We're going to ease into today. April is here. Hello, YouTube. Hello, replay viewers. We just got out of womanhood initiation. April, what was it like?
Oh man, it was refreshing. It was so wonderful to see the women sharing their stories and their fears, and just being in a group of women. It's quite, it's like a breath of fresh air, where everyone's just present.
So our next womanhood initiation is next Thursday at 10 a.m. Pacific. You can register with the link in my bio on YouTube. The link is in the description. Today's womanhood initiation, what came up as a theme both during the initiation and after is what you see on the screen on TikTok and what you see here on YouTube. And that topic is womanhood, being hurt or hurting others when I'm 100. Okay. One woman specifically said, when I come, really come as who I am, not trying to play nice or, as April mentioned yesterday, shifting herself to accommodate other people's feelings and sensitivities, but those people not having the skill or the care to accommodate her. Right? So then if I stop doing all this hyper accommodating and I really just be who I am. And when you develop emotional refinement and skill, you can still be fierce around people who don't care or who do not want to accommodate you. When you develop the skill and the refinement of your emotions, you can do that. And then another woman was like, I don't want to get hurt. And I was so inspired by her. I actually DM'd her on TikTok later, and she had already DM'd me, and I hadn't seen it. I told her that's leadership. That's leadership. Sharing honestly like that, vulnerably. I don't want to be hurt. I don't want to be hurt. You know, it's yeah. So I'm feeling after womanhood initiation, it's nothing like getting inside of a truth telling session with other women that softens, it humbles, it yeah, it shows, it really shows. And I want more men really who care, who truly care about being models in the world. I know that's few and far in between, but I mean being real models for supporting the feminine, the full feminine. Um, it shows in how the man talks, walks, moves. It's sort of like men who talk who don't have daughters versus men who talk who have daughters who they love. A man talks very differently when he has daughters that he loves than men who don't have daughters or who don't like women. And the vulnerability of a woman, if when a woman is truly vulnerable and she shares with you, especially when you get a chance to watch her grow. There's one thing when it's, the woman who you meet at 25, 35, as a man, that's your first introduction to a woman in that way, in a vulnerable way, where, right, you are penetrating her, perhaps she's sharing some of who she is, etc. And then the dynamic of watching your innocent little girl, right? You watched her come out of her mother's vagina. You watched her matriculate up into being this innocent, small little thing into having her menstrual cycle and into perhaps bullying at school and dealing with boys when she's 12 and 13 years old. And then you watch her, she comes to you with some real vulnerable stuff about stuff that you thought was just women being feminists. And, before you had a daughter, you thought it was just bitter black women. You thought it was just, bitches just need to humble themselves to their husband and then, right? And that's why we going to Colombia to get wives because you ain't submissive and, right? Like so many men think, right? But the ones who have daughters and they were in her life from the moment she exited her mother's vagina and lived in the house with that father, and he was present with her and listened to her, and she felt safe to come to him at 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20 years old, he's going to have a very, 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 very different outlook on women than a man who didn't know a woman until he was 35 years old, or who never has experienced a woman, which most men, males, have not experienced a woman at 100. So I'm feeling rather relaxed today after our initiation, rather sort of lean back, reminded. So before we go further, if you're here on a regular basis and you find value here on a regular basis, will you please go ahead and share this live stream and or, give us those hearts. Thank you so much for liking the live. Let me scroll. Danielle. Let me see who I've missed here. Oh, thank you, April. I see somebody you invited has come in. TRS United. So this topic, womanhood, being hurt or hurting others when I'm 100. April, would you like to segue us into that in whatever way you want?
Can you hear me well?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would love to. Hello, everyone. I am April De La Jour, creator of the Black Hero Salon Revolution, founder of Holistic Femme World. And as a woman, right, and as a powerful woman, I recognize the power of, as Naima likes to just call it, right out of my pussy, right? And how when she speaks her truth, even when she's gentle in speaking her truth, she still hurts because she's unadulterated in that truth. And when you're encountering people in the world who are not used to such truth, that is, and you're not used to such truth, or managing that truth, managing yourself in that power, the ego gets involved. And I personally have become concerned about how others perceive me.
Yeah.
And that has created fear around my work. Because around my work, I see what needs to be done.
Yeah.
And in doing that, what needs to be done calls for a lot of change. That change management within all these complex internal systems of the people that you're working with. Excuse me, my apologies. And as Naima, you mentioned yesterday on our live, is that as we activate people with that truth, they activate parts of us. And I personally have not been able to manage those fears because in addition to that, it's a feral nature. And when you're so accustomed to showing up refined, making yourself perfect,
right?
Yeah. For others, my apology. Something back there is going on.
Hey.
But when you are accustomed to, again, presenting yourself in a way for others to receive you, you create an internal conflict.
Yeah.
Because the truth just wants to be expressed.
Really?
And that conflict manifests as fear and shrinkage and regression and hiding.
So many. Yeah.
And so one of my favorite things to say around this is like, we're not afraid. It's these belief systems that we have that makes us afraid, you know? And so how do we dissect that? How do we break, again, dismantle these belief systems so the truth can soar?
Yeah.
How do we do that? Like, and that's the work. Yeah.
So there's so many different ways to talk about this topic. There's so many different ways to talk about this topic. And what I'm going to open to now is, for those of you who are listening, if you have a certain angle of it that troubles you, that pains you, that you'd like for me to speak to, now would be a really good time. Even if you're on YouTube, I see you on YouTube, you can put it in the chat, because there's so many different ways that the fear of either hurting others when you're 100 or of being hurt, there's so many nuanced ways that that makes the woman make decisions that choke her, that bind her in ways that she will regret over time. And so I can talk about it from so many different angles, and I'd love for this to be in best service to the people who are here now. I would love that. So I invite you wholeheartedly and openly, if you already have an area that you know is paining you around, if I show up 100, people are going to be hurt. If I do show up 100 and I put myself out there, what's going to be the feedback? You know, how are people going to perceive me? How that might sting, that might hurt, right? So there's so many different angles to talk about it. Um, and I have one in mind already. April, is there a particular angle that you'd like for me to speak about this from, that would you feel would be useful to you? And if it's useful to you, it's useful to others.
Yes. So are you asking me?
Yeah, if there's an angle in particular.
Honestly, I would like, only because I have, that sophisticated prison, right? There, I can really intellectualize it, and so if I can get you to ask, a question that would bring something, that would surprise me. I think that would be a breaking moment to share.
Well, I'll share what's present for me right now, because I said I already have one idea, and let's see how that lands for everybody here. So I'm feeling really raw and sensitive right now. See, I know why women are. I know why we are the way we are. Like, I know I come on here and I'm so passionate and I'm like so striking, and all that is true. It's a dimension of me. And one place that that comes from is I know the effort, the deliberate, consistent effort to get both men and women. I know we're constantly talking about women, but we need to remember that men hurt too.
Yeah.
They just aren't allowed to talk about how they hurt. Okay. They get shamed and belittled and whatnot. And so I know, not only do I know it because so much of it is in the books, the stuff that was able to get through, but I know it because I'm a woman and I've done the work to come to know who I am. And so as I'm here and I'm speaking, I'm really feeling literally what's happening inside of the woman collectively that makes us, like, it's so physiological, it's so deep. And so it'll make us choose what's here, and it's all by design. It'll make us hook into the systems that exist today, because to truly unhook from these systems that are not of our creation, it is very destabilizing. It demands that you truly grow up and truly become sovereign and truly take responsibility. And the way things are designed, it is so easy to do what we can do. The things that are part of the normal trajectory of being an adult, you know, what do you call it? Accomplished, or you did all the right things, right? You go to college, you get married, you have children, you live whatever life that parents are supposed to live. You get old, you become grandparents, and you die. Like, it's just so easy to do that, which is why so many people do it. And it's not until we get closer, middle aged, or over 50 or whatnot, that we're like, how did I get here? Or realizing how much we were not intentional about our lives and how common that is amongst adult people. And I know there's just a normal frequency of the anyway, I could go on and on and on. So what the original idea that I was having here, I always go to marriage because it's one of the big hooks in society. It's a major hook in society. And when we start talking about, like when you talked yesterday about watching your daughter, you're able to see where you abandoned yourself by watching her. And it's between these ages of 18, right, and 30 that all of us make a big decision. And one of those big decisions is marriage. Kids, that's between, 18 and 30, many adults, most adults make the decision about if I'm going to get married, if I'm going to have kids. Now, things are changing now. Women are getting married later, having kids later. But by and large, that's what it's been like, right? We would make that big decision between 18 and 30 if we're going to get married and we're going to have kids. And then for people who get married young, like I got married at 21, oftentimes if you're going to divorce, it's going to happen before you turn 30, because at 21, your brain hasn't even fully developed. So like, it's a bad idea, I think, to get married before 25. And so many women, and this is really good for us to look at. This could get long. I actually wanted us to be here no longer than 45 minutes, and I see that we're already at 12:20. Because consciousness and the illumination of consciousness is happening so rapidly today. We're seeing things that have been here all along, but because our minds were more narrowed with limited knowledge, we're just like, women who are like over 50. So many of them, you hear, they're on the internet telling you, if I knew this 30 years ago, how differently I would have chosen, right? And more women are talking at all levels of generations, right? We got women who are over 70 talking on the internet. You have young girls who are 20 talking on the internet. And we're hearing how people used to think, what it was like for women. And so you're hearing more women who are over 50 talking about why they chose the way they chose in 1950, 1940, 1930. And we're hearing it through the woman's voice, because the prior to technology, the loud voices was the male voice, and the male voice was saying, and even after, once social media got here and men would talk, I used to see it all the time, particularly in like 2015, 2016, 2017. I often saw Black men, particularly, being like, yeah, Lois knew how to let her man cheat in peace. I would hear things like that, like in 2015, 16, 17, or a woman back in the 50s knew how to keep a house together. She knew how to keep her man. She knew how to, right? And this was before women started talking on the internet, right?
Right.
And so then when women started talking, particularly women who were married with kids and grandkids and were over 50, they were singing a very different tune. And the tone that those women were singing was, well, we couldn't even get a credit card until 1974. You couldn't afford to not be married.
Right.
Your husband could put you inside of a loony bin if he didn't like how you were acting in the 1940s and 50s. And all he had to do was make a phone call. There was no your voice being expressed in that situation. Women couldn't make the money that they could make now, right? But we only heard that when women started talking. And again, we're talking about the 20th century, right? So if we just can just imagine for women in the 1800s, 1700s, 1600s, how they lived and how they chose, and how normalized this has been in humanity, that a woman cleaves herself to a man because if you don't, you will starve, you will struggle, your children will struggle, you will be ostracized, you will be made to feel incomplete, lacking in wholeness, a witch, etc. And don't assert any kind of power. Like, don't assert your voice. Don't, let me do something real quick. I'm setting the stage for this, why the fear of being hurt and how it's attacked, the root of it, underneath it. And so, um, those of us today who are um, not yet married or are newly married, um, and just are making decisions about the women we want to be and telling the truth now, right? And which is relatively new, right? Telling the truth online, particularly about who we are, and that's a whole other topic. Um, we're still dealing with the frequency and the consciousness of what has been for centuries. I want us to remember that we're dealing with that. That for centuries, women have morphed themselves in order to keep a man. Women have perfected what we talked about yesterday: lying, playing small, and manipulating, just have perfected it. And from the male perspective, so many men, because they benefit a lot from the system, right? I mean, because I've looked at this. Not only have I talked to men about this, but I've looked at it from their perspective. I know a lot of men. I won't even focus on the men on the internet, um, but I mean, imagine as a woman, if you knew you got married to this person and they were going to cook your food, clean your house, do your laundry, satisfy you in whatever sexual way you wanted, and like that was their role, and like all you had to do was the thing that you were to do, right, as the woman. I mean, wouldn't that be appealing to you too, in a way? You know what I'm saying? uh and that, and I like to relate race right here in this part, because I think we can see it when I add race to it. So white people for a long time did not have to consider the feelings of black people, did not have to consider who they are, their value. You didn't have to, right? We are the power, we are in charge here. What we say goes, deal with it, right? For a long time, that's the way it was. And then with all the race relations work that's been done over the last, what, 40 years, thank you for liking the live, Jay. But all the race relations work and the critical race theory and, just consciousness increasing and more people talking on the internet, the saying has now started to circulate that, when you've been in privilege your whole life, equality starts to feel like oppression. Have you heard that one, April?
I have, in the distant memory. It's very familiar. I don't think I sat with it to pull anything out of it, but I like that.
Yeah. And so, like, for white people, because now Black folks have gotten louder about different kinds of equality, it's like, well, you got Barack Obama as president. Aren't you grateful? It's like, stop asking for so much. Like, so it's like you're asking for too much. Now this is starting to feel like you're trying to take from me. This is oppressive. You need to stay in your lane. The white people have the power. We're in charge. You're beneath. And that's an equivalent of what it's been like for now for men, particularly over the last 20 years, with women no longer just keeping their mouth shut. Like, Black people, you're supposed to keep your mouth shut and just be grateful that we gave you a Black president. Like, be grateful that you can even have a job working in this white corporate office. Like, be happy that you even have this. And so now men, because it's been so distorted for so long, and I know a lot of men, patriarchy blinds them. That's this hypnotic seduction of it. And the whole, the elite, if you will, are like, we know that if we give this man this particular order, we never have to worry about him really going after the system, because we're men and we know that if you give men power over a woman and give him food and a house, you don't really have to worry about him doing much outside of that. He may bark, but he's not really going to risk anything as long as you satisfy his base nature. And that's essentially what the creators of patriarchy were doing. This has been written too for those who were audacious enough to write it. But we even know that if we just are telling the truth about things. And so, how men hurt in that is that it's sort of like welfare, right? You keep giving people welfare. After a while, they feel entitled to it, right? Just keep giving them free money. You just keep giving them this shit that's unearned. They feel entitled. Like white people feel very entitled to their false position of power, don't they? They feel entirely privileged. I mean, they will fight you. They will kill your whole bloodline to try to return to what is right. So recognize the gravity of that, everybody who's listening now. They will fight you, kill you, put whole systems in place to maintain an unnatural order, which is what we're living in now. And they have hooked into all men's consciousness. Thank you for liking the live, Funk Master P. Hey, Divine Flow. They have hooked into the base nature of the male and the unconscious mind of the male to get him to agree for a long time. And evidently it works because men now fight for this. And now, just as white people have felt like Black people wanting equality feels like oppression, when women start really asserting their true power, now suddenly you're being a man. That's not divine order.
Right.
You're out of order. That's masculine. Yeah, no, see, your job is to be under me. Yeah, see, like the white man. No, your job is to be under me. I'm to run this. I'm the law. You are insignificant. You better be lucky that I even pay these bills. You better be lucky you can even work in my white corporate office. You see the similarities there? Yeah. Hello, inspo. Yeah. So I created that context there to demonstrate, because men don't even realize how they lose, but who cares when you getting pussy and food? Really, in a way, right? If I'm feeding you at a base nature, you have to be somebody of a true higher order to even really start to carve your life to truly work at a higher order. And most men are not doing that. A lot of men's power has been usurped through this system and they don't even realize it. You have anything you want to say about that?
I mean, what came to mind is, I was doing some work around this with my, in relationship to my ex last year. And what I realized is most men who are uncomfortable with a woman's feminine essence, true feminine essence, this is a little controversial, but, the Bill Cosby. Yeah. Bill Cosby used to put his women to sleep. He loved sleeping with women who were sleeping. That was his kink. And so these men today, they have a kink. They love a repressed woman.
It's amazing.
And so,
it's amazing.
Right?
It's like the truth of that, loving a repressed woman. Hi, Laura.
And they don't realize in loving that repressed woman, they too remain repressed. Like they cannot even experience the fullness of who they are.
And that they don't see that. This is also how you know the man is not, he can't take us where we want to go. The fact that he can't see that, or that he can agree to that and stay there, is profound. I'm like, people really don't.
It's true. And I want to give an example. So my ex, who I thought he was a nice guy, I thought was going to be my husband. And then I learned some things. I'm like, wait a minute, there's something behind the nice guy. And so in any case, to keep the story short, we had a breakup. And then he wanted to win me back over by inviting me to, come and take his home over. Right? Like, come make my home your home in his own little way, just in words. It wasn't any real action. And so in any case, I said, let me move in with him and see how, this will progress. The man paid all the bills, right? He did all the cleaning. He had his mom come and do all the cooking. I literally didn't have to do anything.
Yeah.
As long as I stayed in the house.
Yeah. This is what I mean. Uh-oh, what just happened? Oh, child, the live is acting funny. it just cleared. It just absolutely cleared. Oh, they just restricted me. Oh, listen. So now, okay, what were we just talking about? Or we were at the topic here? I'm telling you, when we start liberating men and women, hate speech and hateful behavior. Okay, I'm just sharing this with YouTube right now. So TikTok just suspended. It says live access suspended until the 18th. It's getting real. See what I mean? Hate speech and hateful behaviors. This is the reason why they're telling me they're suspended. Hate speech and hateful behaviors. Boy, I'm telling you, when the right man and the right woman come together, I noticed seeing a lot of people just say shit to be inflammatory on the internet and just to sound superfluous. Superfluous. Listen, I'm hooked in. When the right man and the right woman come into their full power together and do difficult things together, that is so anti status quo, if you will. So April is gone. I'm going to end. I'm going to end. So thank you so much for being here. And I'm here Monday through Thursday at 12 p.m. Pacific. So I will be back here next Monday at 12 p.m. Pacific. If you have any questions or you'd like to comment, you're always welcome to do so. I do see them. I do come and look at them. And thank you so much for being here.